Okay, so this next section is actually 3 excerpts of the final chapters of this reading. And we go into 1 Nephi chapter 4, chapter 5, and chapter 7. And in each of these sections, we have Nephi and Lehi counseling others and helping them to build their faith in Jesus Christ. And so the question that we're exploring into this is, how can we help others increase their faith in Jesus Christ? How can we help others? What
and
examples?
Help them not murmur.
Yes, to help them not murmur.
Rebel.
So that they will have faith in Jesus Christ to act, and faith to do, and faith to do things to lead them to not rebel against these things. So the first one is actually 3 verses. It's found chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. And I think this is one of the coolest things. They just failed twice in obtaining the plates. They still don't know if they're ever going to be able to get these plates. It seems like an impossible task. And then Nephi stands boldly before his brothers, and he essentially teaches the example of Moses. So he uses example to build their faith in their situation that is at hand. And so he says, "Let us be strong like unto Moses, for truly he spake unto the waters to divide the Red Sea, and they got out of captivity on dry ground from the armies of Pharaoh." So he uses this example, which is from, interesting enough, it's on the plates of brass. It's in the Old Testament. I'm sure this story was told as kids by Father Lehi and Mother Sariah, but they knew Moses, and so he used this as an example. Let us be like unto Moses. If he could do it, so can we. Later in the Book of Mormon, in the Book of Mormon actually, we have that question. Have miracles ceased? Have miracles ceased? And it says, only unto the faith of man. So when do miracles cease in our life? When we stop believing in miracles. Let us be like unto Moses. Let us look unto those examples to build our faith.
I love that. The second section of scriptures that it gives is chapter 5, verses 1 through 8. And this is when Lehi and Sarai are together. Their sons have gone off, and Sarai is getting upset because she thinks that they've probably perished. She doesn't know she doesn't know what has happened to her sons, and she's kind of complaining to Lehi that he's led them into the wilderness to perish. And she says that she says you're a visionary man. You've led us out here to perish in the wilderness. And I love Lehi's response. He says, I know that I am a visionary man.
You're right.
Goes on, you're right. I am a visionary man. And I love that because basically he's bearing his testimony with what he knows. He has seen visions. He knows who he is. He knows he's a prophet of God. He knows what he's doing. And he bears his testimony to her about that. And it goes on to say that he has obtained a land of promise, and he rejoices and knows that God will deliver his sons. And bring them back down into the wilderness. And then it says, after this manner of language, this is verse 6, did my father Lehi comfort my mother Sariah concerning us while we journeyed in the wilderness up to the land of Jerusalem to obtain the record of the Jews. And when we had returned to the tent of my father, behold, their joy was full. And my mother was comforted. And so I don't know how much time exactly happened between Lehi's testimony here to Sariah and then the boys coming back. But during that time, it seemed like Sariah had to lean on the testimony of her husband, lean on the testimony of somebody else while hers was faltering, where she was murmuring, where she was not happy. She might have wanted to rebel and go back, but during that time, she was able to look to the testimony of somebody else. And it just also shows the importance of us, first of all, bearing our testimonies with what we do know, the truths that we know, and second, being able to rely on the testimonies of others. That's why we love like Fast Sunday, hearing the testimonies of others can help strengthen us when we are weak.
Yeah. I love the transformation of Sariah's testimony, because I'm not going to say she gained a testimony through this experience. Her testimony was strengthened. At times in life, our testimonies are tried. Yeah. We sometimes have to come to the edge, and then we take the leap of faith in order for that knowledge to be able to then take a belief and to be able to say, I know. And what happened through this experience of doubting and wondering and questioning and maybe even having some anxiety that her sons will never come back, she then said in verse 8, now I know of a surety that the Lord hath commanded my husband to flee into the wilderness. Her then testimony became knowledge.
Well, I love that struggle because it's just like building muscle. What do you do when you go, bodybuilding or whatever? What happens to your, why does it hurt when you work it? It's because you're tearing down your muscle for it to build stronger.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's like our testimonies. It's kind of like a muscle. So sometimes it has to be kind of torn down, stripped down sometimes in order for it, go through hardships in order for it to be strengthened even more.
Very true. This last section is Nephi again counseling others, and it's in chapter 7, the last chapter of our reading, and we're focused in verses 6 through 21. So in these verses, we have Nephi not just counseling his brethren, which I think is kind of interesting. They've now gone back and have brought with them Ishmael and his family, and so there's a relationship there, but these aren't his brothers. This isn't his family. They become his family through marriage. But at this point, they are just other people traveling with them. And so Nephi's counsel is to more than just his family. But I love some of the principles I pulled from this reading, and you might find some more. But I loved ask direct questions, sometimes to help our children, to help others, to help ourselves. Sometimes it's asking those direct questions that cause us to actually do some soul searching. And then another principle that I saw is actually the word forgotten, which is mentioned 1, 2, 3, maybe even a fourth time. The word forgotten. And it's not that I love the word forgotten, but I love its sister, the opposite of forgotten, which is remember. And so one way that we can build one way that we can build faith is by remembering. How do we have more faith today? It's remembering the way the Lord blessed us yesterday. How do we have faith tomorrow? It's looking for the hand of the Lord in our lives today. Remember, remember, remember. Do not forget. A lack of faith comes from forgetting the things that the Lord has done for us in our lives.
I love that. So thinking about these examples, the last question it says is, what do you learn from these that can help you next time you are tempted to murmur or to rebel, or somebody can? So try to apply this in our lives to see how it can strengthen and help us.
Pray like unto Nephi, where he said, give me strength that I may burst the bands which I am bound. We might find in life sometimes that we feel like we can't go on, or it's too hard, or what the future being unknown makes it too difficult. Pray for the strength to be able to burst those bands in our life. And God is good. He loves us. And we'll see his hand in our lives if we act.